The movie opens in New York City where we see a man named Howard Wakefield working in a hurry through a crowd. He soon gets on a train where he begins discussing work on the phone, and we learn that he's a successful attorney trapped in a stressful job. Not long after, the electricity is cut off and the train suddenly stops, which frustrates the passengers. Just then, Howard receives a call from his home, but he chooses not to answer it. Following this, the passengers are forced to go home on foot, including Howard, who walks through complete darkness in the spring. After working for a while, he finally arrives at his house in the suburbs, but before he can enter, he comes across a raccoon near the garage, which is detached from the house. An irritated Howard tries to drive the animal away, but the raccoon instead sneaks inside. And so Howard follows it and climbs the stairs to the attic where he finally drives the animal away. He then proceeds to leave, but all of a sudden, he looks out the window and notices it has a perfect view of his house. Just then, the electricity comes back on, and Howard sees his wife Diana and their two daughters who have just finished dinner. Diana once again calls her husband to ask when he's coming home, but Howard doesn't answer. He then recalls how, a few days earlier, Diana was chatting with another man at a party. This made Howard jealous and eventually led to a passionate encounter between the couple. But after they were done, they began quarreling as Howard accused her of flirting with that man. It seems their marriage was not going well, and Diana even said she was exhausted by her husband's constant surveillance. In the present, Diana is furious that her husband still hasn't arrived, so she angrily throws the dinner in the trash. A disappointed Howard decides not to go home, knowing his wife will create a scene that will lead to another argument. He thus sits in an old chair and decides to spend the night in the attic to have one night of peace. The next morning, Howard wakes up and relieves himself in the bushes outside his house. He wants to go home but fears his wife will accuse him of sleeping with someone else, even though he has never given her a reason to doubt him in 15 years of marriage. He decides to wait until she leaves for work and carefully retrieves the foil wrapped potato Dinah had thrown in the trash last night. Later, Howard returns to the attic and eats the potato while watching his wife send the children to school. Diana looks very worried, so she calls Howard's office as well, and seeing her so stressed gives Howard a strange sense of enjoyment. Diana even checks the garage and notices that the husband's car is still there. She then calls several friends and acquaintances, but none of them know Howard's whereabouts, which makes her increasingly worried. Meanwhile, Howard is just waiting for his wife to leave, but he's shocked to notice the arrival of cops at his house. While Diana is talking with the officers, Howard uses binoculars to observe carefully and laughs at the situation. After some time, the officers finally leave and they assume Howard is just hanging out at some strip club. Once she is left alone, a worried Diana begins to break down in tears, which finally makes Howard feel a flicker of guilt. Then, shortly after, Diana's mother, Babs, arrives, whom Howard strongly dislikes. Babs thinks Howard has abandoned the family, but Diana doesn't believe this as he would have emptied all the bank accounts. Howard is deeply annoyed by Babs and imagines that if he had a sniper rifle right now, he would shoot her. After a while, Diana finally leaves for work, and Howard feels disappointed that she would prioritize her job even while her husband is missing. He then enters his house where he eats, shaves his beard, and puts on some fresh clothes. Howard considers leaving a note with an explanation, but suddenly he changes his mind as he thinks Diana isn't happy with him. He changes back into his old clothes and cleans up the house to erase any traces of his presence. Howard then gathers a supply of canned food and other necessities before returning to hide in the attic again. The scene then cuts to a few days later where Howard watches his house from the attic window and notices there's a gathering of friends and family to morally support Diana. When he notices a young colleague named Ben, Howard recalls that he is carrying a crucial document for an important case, but it seems all meaningless now. Howard also sees on TV the news of his own disappearance, so he imagines himself storming into the gathering right now and making a surprise entrance, which makes him laugh. After the guests leave, Howard goes to the trash cans to look for leftovers so he can eat something. Before going to bed, he spies on his wife and recalls a habit of walking naked in front of the windows, which used to cause arguments between them. He then checks on his cash and realizes he's running low, but using the credit card would immediately give him away. Later, Howard goes down to the garden to collect water from the tap, but then while hiding in the bushes, he imagines what he would have done if he had actually decided to leave the family. He says that he would have simply left a note and moved to a hotel. Later, Howard realizes he does not need many things, such as a phone, a smooth shave, or clean clothes. He promises that from now on he will take nothing from the house and would have to board a train. Howard then looks at his kids and realizes that he has seen them more in the past few days than he ever did in the past few years. In the following days, Howard continues to hide and grow his beard while feeding on scraps from the trash. He is even willing to fight homeless people for a decent meal. Since Howard doesn't have a TV, he watches the lives of his neighbors, especially a man named Dr. Sundervan, who treats children with Down syndrome and other developmental disorders at his home. It turns out that when the doctor started doing this, all the neighbors signed a petition against him. However, Howard supported the doctor, giving him a sense of moral superiority over Diana, who opposed it because she was concerned about what the doctor was doing to those children behind closed doors. Later that night, Howard sneaks into Dr. Sundervan's place, where he uses the shower to freshen up. In the morning, Howard sees Diana taking out the trash, a duty that had previously been his. He used to handle all the bills, property taxes, and mortgage payments, and he feels satisfaction knowing that all of this now falls on Diana. Sometime later, Ben comes to the house and he begins talking with Diana in the kitchen with Howard watching as usual. It seems like Ben wants Diana to sign the formalities to have Howard officially declared a missing person. During the process, Ben tries to get close to her and holds her hands, but she keeps her distance, which pleases Howard. Later, Howard recalls how he met his wife when she used to take dance classes and was already dating a man named Dirk Morrison. It turns out that Dirk and Howard were best friends and they used to compete over everything, even simple bar tricks. Seeing Dirk's interest in Diana prompted Howard to approach her and he began flirting with her. She was hesitant at first because she was dating Dirk, but Howard eventually managed to win her over. When Dirk found out about their relationship, Howard told him that Diana was never in love with Dirk and was only trying to protect his feelings. But that was a lie as Diana was torn between the two men and couldn't make up her mind. It turns out she wasn't sleeping with either man at that point, but Howard decided to play dirty and told Dirk that she had slept with him. He knew Dirk would do something reckless, and it unfolded exactly as he expected. Dirk approached Diana and aggressively tried to get intimate with her, which she refused, so the heartbroken man confronted Howard and violently punched him, which caused a huge scene. This finally became the last straw for Diana, who decided to choose Howard and slept with him. In the present, Howard recalls that even 1 year after marriage, he wondered if he would have wanted her if she hadn't been his best friend's girlfriend first, but by then she was already pregnant with twins and he couldn't even think about leaving her. Howard says that if he had divorced her, no one would blame her if she dated someone soon, but by disappearing, he has left her in limbo and made her unavailable to others. One morning, Howard hears the voices of his daughters and realizes they are trying to sneak into the attic. However, he cleverly makes a rustling noise so the girls think there's an animal there and run away in horror. That night, Howard checks the trash and realizes his wife has cleared out most of the food, which she usually does before their annual summer trip. He becomes annoyed that she would even think about a vacation at a time like this, especially when there's far less income than before. Soon, Howard realizes that his wife will come to the attic to retrieve some things for the summer vacation, which means he has to get out of there. He carefully hides all traces of his stay and then goes to the riverside where he finds a place to spend a night under the open sky. However, he struggles to sleep there after being attacked by several mosquitoes, prompting him to run away. At dawn, Howard limps back home and sees his whole family going on the trip with Babs. He then goes to the park in broad daylight as people don't recognize him anymore because of his hobo demeanor. He checks the trash bins for food where he comes upon a magazine and begins reading. Here, Howard finds Dirk's picture on the cover page, along with an article describing how Dirk has become successful on Wall Street. It turns out he's divorced, so Howard laughs and calls him a loser. At this moment, a little boy with his mother comes by to give Howard some money, which he later uses to buy a hamburger. In the evening, Howard rummages through abandoned items in search of suitable clothes and shoes, since his shoes have worn out. However, here he is caught by a mafia couple who take away everything he has managed to find. They get into a scuffle during which Howard seizes back the shoes and begins running away, chased by the couple. But Howard manages to escape and soon hides in the storage room of Dr. Sundervan's place where a teenage girl with Down syndrome notices him. But the amused girl invites him inside where there is another boy and both introduce themselves as Emily and Herbert. Next, Herbert notices the shoes in Howard's hands and helps him put them on. Before leaving, Howard tells the teens not to tell anyone about him, to which they also agree. The next morning, Howard worries that the two teens might tell Dr. Sundavan about him. He is then startled by someone and discovers that the teens have arrived with a cake for him. While he eats, the duo rummages through the boxes and extracts all things. Howard is very happy to finally have some company, so he begins playing with the teens and shows them various interesting items. However, in the end, he tells them not to come back or he may have to leave, to which the teens agree. The scene then cuts to some time later when the family has returned from their summer vacation, and Howard begins observing them again. After a while, he notices Diana leaving the house with her ballet outfit and learns she is going to dance classes again. Time flies by, and Halloween also arrives with a party going on at his house. Here, Howard notices some teen boys arriving to visit his daughters and reflects on how quickly they have grown up. While going through his family's garbage dumps, Howard notices that his wife has begun buying cheaper products to save money. He wonders what will happen if she suddenly decides to sell the house and if he even returns home, how he could explain his situation to her. Sometime later, it's Thanksgiving Day, during which Diana and the kids go to visit Babs, which means Howard won't be getting any leftover food. But it doesn't matter as the garbage cans of the neighbors end up providing him a real feast. However, he soon faces another problem as it starts to snow outside and becomes extremely cold in the attic. Howard struggles to sleep all night and soon begins to fall extremely ill. During this, a raccoon enters the attic and eats most of his food, but Howard can barely react and soon hallucinates his wife taking care of him. The next morning, Howard wakes up to see medicine beside him, and it turns out that Emily and Herbert have come to visit with warm food. The man begins eating and is deeply moved by the teen's compassion, as they have even brought him clean clothes. After this, he gradually begins to recover, and one day he goes straight to his house and finally comes across Diana. With his overgrown beard and filthy clothes, she doesn't recognize him and assumes he's just a homeless man. This disappoints Howard, and he notices that the Down syndrome kids are also leaving, which means he has lost his only friends as well. To make matters worse, Howard notices his family clearing out his closet to donate the items, which implies that they are finally accepted that he is gone. The sad man wanders the streets in the cold evening while surrounded by the spirit of the coming Christmas. He realizes that he loves his wife but fears that if he returns, he will surely lose her since she seems happy without him now. At home, he sees Diana laughing and chatting on the phone, and the crushing realization hits him that she has already been seeing someone else. Days later, Howard notices Diana returning home with a huge bouquet of roses and seeming very excited. Then Diana and the kids begin preparing dinner for a special guest, and Howard wonders who it could be. Not long after, a man pulls up at the house, and based on the car, Howard realizes that the guy is a city fella. After spending a pleasant evening with the family, the man proceeds to leave, and Howard's eyes widen in shock when he realizes it is none other than his former best friend, Doug Morrison. He worries that Doug and Dinah might have discussed their past, which might have exposed Howard's lies and manipulations. Later, Howard stands by the window and watches Dinah unpack a gift from Doug, which fills him with jealousy. Unable to bear the victory of his longtime rival, he decides to turn his life around and return home. In the morning, Howard checks his wallet, which has some money, and goes to buy clean clothes and shoes from a thrift store. After that, he goes to the barber shop to tame his ragged hair, shave, and even get a manicure. He then puts the remaining cash into his old clothes and leaves them by the trash. Next, Howard returns to the garage, gets into his car, and leaves the house. He then heads toward New York and finds it remarkable that he hasn't forgotten how to drive. He passes by his old office and soon arrives at the luxury store to buy an expensive suit using his credit card. Later in the attic, he carefully gets ready, takes out his essentials such as his watch and phone before looking at his reflection in the mirror. Under the veil of snowflakes falling from the sky, Howard musters the courage to walk back into his house. As he sees his family decorating the Christmas tree, he imagines them being overjoyed at his return, but also envisions a second scenario in which they react with horror. He then opens the door with his keys, and the movie ends with this.
I'm home.
After months of watching his family from the shadows, after choosing loneliness over love, after realizing the pain he caused, Howard finally did one thing he feared the most. He went home, but the real question is, was he going back to reclaim his life or to face the consequences of abandoning it? Howard thought that disappearing would give him freedom, but instead it showed him everything he was about to lose: his wife, his children, and the life he once took for granted. If you enjoyed this deep and disturbing movie recap, make sure to like this video and subscribe to CineSnap because we bring you the most powerful, shocking, and thought provoking movie stories every week.